look, this life is temporary, there is an accountability, there is a potentiality of having this painful torment, this painful punishment that can come to people who choose to continue to live in arrogance, in heedlessness, and so on and so forth. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our next episode of Quranic Transformation. We are starting a new surah today, Surah Nuh. And alhamdulillah, we have covered, I think, four with you all, alhamdulillah, so far. So share with us how you're feeling, what reflections you drive away as you look into those verses that we are covering, and how you're implementing them. So please do share, inshallah, in comments. With that, let's begin. The recitation of Surah Nuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه أن أنذر قومك من قبل أن يأتيهم عذاب أليم قال يا قوم إني لكم نذير مبين أن اعبدوا الله واتقوه وأطيعون يغفر لكم من ذنوبكم ويؤخركم إلى أجل مسمى إن أجل الله إذا جاء لا يؤخر لو كنتم تعلمون قال رب إني دعوت قومي ليلا ونهارا فلم يزدهم دعائي إلا فرارا وإني كلما دعوتهم لتغفر لهم جعلوا أصابعهم في آذانهم واستغشوا ثيابهم وأصروا واستكبروا استكبارا ثم إني دعوتهم جهارا ثم إني أعلنت لهم وأسررت لهم إسرارا. Okay, subhanAllah. So this is obviously the struggle of Nuh alayhi salam, how he was that pinnacle of the one who gave da'wah for 950 years. So we'll see about what was his messaging, how he communicated with his people, what was the core messaging, how he used different techniques, and how he sought the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So obviously starting off, here's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirming and confirming that Nuh alayhi salam was one of the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down. And obviously he came to his people, and one of his commandment that was given to him was to warn the people and to bring them out of that heedlessness that they were living in, and to call them and to help them realize that, look, this life is temporary, there is an accountability, there is a potentiality of having this painful torment, this painful punishment that can come to people who choose to continue to live in arrogance, in heedlessness, and so on and so forth.
I think for me, Zubair, one of the things that I do when I'm reading Quran is I try and think of it on a very human perspective. Like I try and think about the people that are being talked about. And this one kind of like sends shivers down my, down my back, because when I think about Nuh alayhi salam, I'm like, this is a unique person, right? Obviously, one of the mighty messengers of Allah, but I just think that his situation is very different. Like, for example, Bani Israel, they knew all along, messenger coming, there's another messenger coming, there's the method, and it's just that. But Nuh, he's like position number one. He's like the first messenger, apart from obviously Adam alayhi salam's there as the prophet and the first creation in human. But for him to come, for Nuh alayhi salam to come, it's a very different situation that's suddenly happened in the earth, you know. So I think about him coming, and I think about him coming at a time when obviously idol worship's there, and he's saying to them that, listen, like this is serious. What's happening here is like very serious. There's like big punishment involved. Look, I'm coming to you as a warner. And I just imagine like being the first one to come directly like this, it must have been very, very challenging. And then to have to do it for so long, and then the result of that in terms of worldly result, it's a really, really big thing Nuh alayhi salam did. And you can see why he's one of the mighty messengers.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think, so just moving on from his communication, right? Now he's coming, and he's also being very blunt and clear, right? Without actually doing any sort of sugarcoating, right? That, look, I'm a clear warner to you.
Mm.
right? So it's not like any sort of sugarcoating happening or this and that. Like, look, there's a lot of stuff that's wrong, that's unacceptable, and that needs to be changed, right? And then what is this call? It's like, look, you should be worshiping Allah Subhanahu wa Taala alone, right? And what is worship, right? Having that submission, that humility, that submission with love. That's how some of the scholars have defined worship. That you're not just submitting, but you submit out of trust, you submit out of love, you submit out of humility. So you're having all those concepts, and then he's calling them to taqwa, which again, one of the things that scholars have defined is that to protect yourself from the anger of Allah, from the punishment of Allah, by doing what He has commanded, submitting to Him, and leaving what He has prohibited. And then how do you do that? Not by using your own intellect and thinking, what, this should be beneficial, this is good for me, this is not good for me, this gives me good state of mind, and I feel good about it. No, well, ati'un, and follow me, obey me, right? So it's really straight up that, look, you have to first of all single out Allah Subhanahu wa Taala for worship, and the way that you will be able to do it is to follow me, right? And which to us, what that means is like the application of Sunnah, and to worship Allah as the Prophet of Allah taught us, and not to just like be inventing our own ways and making our own compromises and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, the situation also makes me think that this is a huge mercy from Allah that there's a messenger coming. Because Allah could have just left these people and gone, okay, cool, you're doing shirk, you shouldn't be doing shirk, you're in Jahannam, that's it, it's a done deal, right? But instead, through His mercy, through His wisdom, Allah sends them someone who tries to correct them, right? And sometimes this can happen to us as well, right? Like we're having a fun
Mhm.
time, maybe we're doing something we shouldn't do, whether it's backbiting or talking or looking or whatever, and then someone goes, bro, like, don't do that, right? And we're like, oh, this guy's just ruining our fun. What's wrong with him? Why is he trying to be pious and religious and all these kind of things? And so you can see how people just kind of like reject the truth when it comes, and all these kind of warnings and everything. But the truth is that Nuh alayhi salam had his people's interests at heart, and Allah was sending him as a mercy to these people. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't do what's good for us. We don't see what's good for us, and rather we reject it, just like his people did.
Right, right. And this is very, very important, right? We have to see about like, are there any reminders or anything that's coming to us and we're just rejecting it because we just don't like the person it's coming from,
Yeah.
or the people it's coming from, and so on and so forth, right? What kind of biases that we might be carrying to kind of reject that, subhanAllah. And looking at the message, right, in verse number 4, like he's, while being a plain warner, while reminding of them, to be straight up and to worship Allah, to fear Allah, to be conscious of Allah. It's also reminding of the forgiveness of Allah,
Mm,
right? And that's again very important to have that holistic mindset, that you're not just looking and knowing Allah by His punishment, but you also said, like as you mentioned, that He cares about us. He's giving us these opportunities to come back to the path, and sending us these reminders, or someone who's a warner, or someone who's giving us nasiha, so that we can come back and course correct ourselves. So He is now telling them about the forgiveness of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. That yes, you may have sins and you will have sins, but Allah is the one who's very forgiving, and He will forgive you. Reminds them of the timeline, that this world is is a certain amount of time that's given to you. It's not that you make a mistake and Allah seizes you right away. But when that time comes, when that bell rings, when that angel of death comes, then that's it. Then it's game over, because then you cannot say, oh, I just need extra 10 minutes or like penalty time or whatever, or
mm.
break. That's it. That's it. So this is your time. When the end will come is not something but when it's come, then that's it. It's the end of the game then.
Yeah, and when you think about his situation, it's like very interesting because some of us might do dawah like once every 2 weeks or once a week or here and there. He's like, look, I am calling these people day and night, and he's like, when I call them, the calling makes them go further away. So
Mhm.
sometimes we have this thing like, should I do dawah? Should I not do dawah? What's the point if they're just gonna go further away anyway? Or am I? But he's like, look, every time I call them, they go further away. And every time I tell them that, hey, come over here, come to the forgiveness of Allah. Look, whatever you've done, don't worry, everything will be forgiven. You can start from afresh. Allah's forgiveness is here. They're doing this. They're actually putting their fingers into their ears. They're covering their faces with their clothes, right? And they're just like in this place where they're just consistent and persistent in denying everything. And all of this denial, this persistence, it comes from one place and one place again, the same old problem of ego and arrogance, which just takes them to that place which is going to ruin their own souls.
Beautiful. Yes. So I think, yeah, this is this, just looking into this continuity of that. What again, it reminds me of that, like, this is something obviously we struggle, right? Like, whatever you do, people are not listening. You try to arrange a class, people don't show up, or it's like you don't see a huge number of people, or it's lack of consistency or lack of implementation, what have you. So just being realistic about it. Look, it is going to be a hard game, right? It's not something. It's not an easy mission. And you're not the only one, right? People who are like way better than you, way closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than you and I, they have all faced it. So that reminds us to be consistent with our efforts, to persevere, and to not give up.
Yeah, and it also reminds us that the results again should not be judged according to what you see. Like, imagine I'm
Mm.
out there and I'm a super da'i and I've given people shahada and I've got 100 shahadas or 1,000 shahadas. And let's say Nuh alayhi salam, we don't know the number, but just imagine he only got 70. That doesn't make me better than Nuh alayhi salam, obviously, right? So we need to realize that the results, even, they don't matter. What matters is your intention. What matters is your action. And then Allah will just choose the results in this dunya, but the reward in the akhirah can be whatever Allah wills it to be.
Beautiful. Yes. So yeah, I think it was from two different angles here, right? So as you said, like, first of all, intention, and then efforts, along with consistency, right? So if you want to include consistency in
Yeah.
that, and then even from a metrics perspective or measurement perspective, it's not something you can, because you can maybe measure something on how, what it looks like today, right? Like, you
Yeah.
can do a
Yeah.
spot check, like spot balance, but what does it mean tomorrow, or a decade from now? So those handful people are the one that basically are the forefathers and what have you, of all the messengers to come later, of all the teachers to come later, of all the du'as to come
SubhanAllah.
later, and of all the Muslims that we have
Yes.
today,
Wow.
right? So it may look like a very small number to you, but then boom, that those are the ones who are surviving, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, you may have like these thousands of shahada, but when you do a spot check on those people a year from now, it's like maybe one or two, or what have you,
Mm,
right? So it's really a hard thing to measure as well. But what we can definitely measure is like the state of your heart, humility, good intentions, keep working hard, and be consistent. And sometimes Allah will bless you with some good results that motivate you, right? There's value to
yeah.
it. But if it doesn't come, you still be consistent.
Absolutely.
Great, man. Jazakallah khairan. So that will wrap up this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.